On 6-12 through 6-14, Jerry also sprayed 2 ounces per acre of zeal. First he told me that he forgot it, then later said that he did apply it, but just did not want it on the records because it was an investigation.
If the court entertains this testimony, we'll have to put in some biased testimony about the bad blood, the family feud between Joe and Jerry. And one of the things he did was to file a criminal complaint that he got dive bombed.
All rise. Please be seated.
Back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. The record should reflect the presence of the parties, counsel, all court personnel, and the jury. Will the counsel stipulate to the correct seating of the jury?
So stipulated.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Busby.
Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, Mr. Frey.
Good afternoon.
Pleasure to see you again. I just want to talk about what just happened during your direct testimony. You got pretty emotional there.
Oh, boy.
That's understandable. Lawsuits are stressful. And I'm sorry to have met you through these circumstances. But the question that I have for you is that I'm wondering if some of that is maybe expressing some remorse about what happened to her.
Oh, none at all. It was a fun thought. A lot of fun being in these fields over the years. And we land leveled them, we did all sorts of things. There's a lot to cut down trees, put in ditches. Yeah, there's a lot to.
You heard my client's testimony about what she testified happened to her farm, right?
Yes,
How she had to shut down business, she lost a bunch of money, she was terrified of her claim.
I listened to her, yes. And
All right. Do you have any remorse for her?
I'd like to know more about it because I didn't know she had to shut down.
Okay. So.
I was getting bad information. Maybe, you clue me in.
I don't want to ask the wrong question about where you were getting information from, but if it were somebody other than your lawyer, I'd like to know who.
It was just various people around the community that were looking at posts on the internet that came apparently, when I would ask them, they'd say it's come from Salisha. I don't have the internet.
Okay. All right, Mr. Frey. You were asked some questions by your counsel about a document that's been marked as, 2 documents that have been marked as Exhibit 34 and 35. Do you remember those?
Yes, they're not in front of me.
I'll do my best to get that in front of you. I'm having an issue here. I'm sorry. Give me a moment. All right. Mr. Frey, do you recognize these documents?
They don't have 34 and 35 on them, so I do not.
Okay, I will represent to you that the exhibits on the left is 34 and the exhibit on the right is 35.
That's good for me.
Okay. All right, so these both describe a job, or a job ticket for a job that took place on 8/16, presumably 2021, right?
Yeah, 21 is written up under the word date.
Okay. Is this your handwriting on both of these?
I have to be careful, I'm sorry. 'Cause
It's okay.
Lynn and I have similar handwriting, but this is mine.
Okay. Do you recall which of these you created first?
I would say the 43 acres.
Okay. And why would you create that one first?
Because in my memory, it was a 43 acre load was the first one out the gate. And I ran out and finished it and then completed the paperwork as 51. And the total that goes to billing to Dalton Lowry.
Okay. So you created two separate tickets for billing purposes?
No, just for our keeping track at the desk and the loading pit.
Okay.
It's kind of like, or it's not a shorthand, but it's, I knew what was going on and I was writing these.
Okay. So, Mr. Frey, do you see on the one on the right there, it states do not steer south of railroad track?
Yes,
Do you recall the video of the flight in Exhibit 21?
very well. And that's where I was maneuvering to get back on the field over the railroad track.
Are you south of the railroad track in that video?
I have no idea. Zoom lenses and one thing another. I've been through battles on investigations where they were proven wrong because zoom lenses were used.
Okay, I'm going to show you the map real quick if you don't mind. Do you recall the testimony of Ms. Anderson? Do you recall that she testified that she filmed the video in front of her house?
Yeah, she was the filmer. Good. Okay. Yes, I yes, Miss Annette. Anderson, yeah.
Right. So,
Well, Your Honor, I'm going to object to this, and I think that misstates testimony that she was the filmer.
Oh, yeah.
can I,
Sustained, I think. But at least that's my recollection, unless you can refresh my.
okay. Well, there's a video, Exhibit 21, that shows your plane over Ms. Anderson's neighborhood, right?
Neighborhood, right.
And not south of the railroad track, right?
I would say it'd be a good opinion.
Do you see the railroad tracks in the map in front of you?
It's easy to see.
Okay. Right. So, well, actually, there's a few more questions I have about that, I'm sorry. All right, Mr. Frey, once again, looking at these, can we agree that the descriptions provided aren't the same of the temperature?
That's right.
And the same is true of the wind direction?
Yep. It's Nevada. It changes a little here and there.
Okay, and the wind speed?
And that changes a little here and there.
Okay. So, do you remember Mr. Weaver testifying that he would, when he did flights, he would provide you with the information to fill out these forms?
That's right.
Is that what occurred for these?
I would say so. Usually when we have forms, and there's multiple forms, we will end up within a few hours talking it over and leaving them as be, or trying to totally change them, but this didn't require that.
Okay. All right. Do you know which of these was submitted to the Department of Agriculture?
I would say the document on my left, I believe you said that's 34,
And how do you know that?
because we would want to submit the total acres.
Okay. The bigger number?
Yeah, and that's billing acreage, and that includes the 7 acre field that was alongside A and K or whatever size they were, 7 to 8.
Right. So, do you recall hearing Brett Allen testify?
Yes,
How long have you known Mr. Allen?
a lot of times I don't know their names for years, and then as they move up in the Department of Agriculture, I know their name. And so I want to say 5 to 7 years. I've known his name and yes.
All right. Have you had any particular exchanges with Mr. Allen about record keeping? When he was a Department of Agriculture employee?
Several of them in the Department of Agriculture I conferred with, but I don't recall Mr. Allen in particular. He's changed the gals of Ruth and people before he was even there. I remember when they were changing to restricted use pesticide reports, we were concerned what all extra was going to need to be kept, and it was all within reason, so it was a short conversation.
All right. Are the records you keep for your business accurate?
To my knowledge, sure are.
Okay. Has any governmental authority ever issued a citation to you for keeping inaccurate records?
Your Honor,
No.
Your Honor, objection, relevance, also goes to potential prior acts.
Goes to the veracity of the records, Your Honor.
I'll allow him to answer that question. I think you answered, I didn't hear the answer. What was the answer?
I don't recall any violation or whatever procedures against me for record keeping. That
Okay. May I have Exhibit 19, please? May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Frey, I'd like you to take a look at that if you could. Mr. Frey, do you recognize this document?
no,
Okay. Can you?
this is to Chuck Moses,
Okay, and who is it from?
Brett Allen.
Okay. So you've never seen this document before?
Not picking up on it, no.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm going to object again, given the date on this document from 2014, relevance, also unduly appropriate at this time.
It's impeachment evidence, Your Honor.
May we approach her?
Of course.
Mr. Frey, I'm going to take that back if you don't mind.
Yeah, I don't recall it at all.
Mr. Frey, wait for it.
I remember,
Mr. Frey, there's no question.
yeah.
So, Mr. Frey, I'll try and keep my questions here pretty straightforward. So I'd just like a yes or no answer. Before the August 31st, 2020 incident, did you know that my client was a farmer?
No,
Okay. Your Honor, I'm in the middle of a bench conference. I'm very sorry.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I think you're about ready to be able to read this to yourselves. That what I'm about to read, we're going to take a brief recess outside your presence. During this recess, it's your duty not to converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not communicate with anyone in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by phone, email, text, internet, or other means. Do not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. Do not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. Additionally, it is your duty not to form or express an opinion on any subject connected with this case until it is finally submitted to you. think this will be a fairly brief recess, but we'll just have you, excuse you to the jury room for a few moments. We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. Court personnel, the parties and counsel are present in the court, and we're outside the presence of the jury. In fairly brief succession, we had two bench conferences. One that I thought we could deal with remotely. That was happened at 2:08, where there was a reference to the 2014 report from the Nevada Department of Agriculture. At that bench conference, I informed counsel that I thought it was too remote in time to be relevant to this action. And then Mr. Busby moved on to his next question. Mr. Busby, I know you don't agree with that ruling. Do you want to put anything on the record?
It's just a generalized objection. Your synopsis of the facts will have to be 100%.
Okay, and anything you want to put on the record?
Not with respect to Exhibit 19.
Okay. Then, and I guess to be clear, yeah, that dealt with Exhibit 19. And then about a minute or two afterwards, Mr. Busby asked Mr. Frey if he knew that Ms. Odum was an organic farmer. I believe that was the question. Is that accurate?
I just asked whether he knew she was a farmer.
A farmer.
Before August 31st, 2020.
And Mr. Frey answered no, and then we had a subsequent bench conference where I reviewed a deposition that at least, what was the timing? Was that deposition for this case?
It is not, Your Honor. It is the deposition
For the previous case?
Previous case number 18-10DC 0188.
And at least those answers would seem to indicate that, at least in that deposition, Mr. Frey's answer was different. Is that a fair characterization of what we're?
I haven't had a chance to review that.
Okay.
Is it?
And so with the backdrop, I have had my previous rulings have said that previous case is not admissible. I don't think that means that his knowledge that she's a farmer from that time period would not be admissible. And so that's kind of where we're at. And it'll be, and I wanted to talk outside the presence of the jury to hear each side what they thought how we should proceed. It comes down it's a little bit further on that second column, about halfway down.
So during the prior lawsuit, when he was accused of spraying her, during the deposition of that lawsuit, he was shown an image and asked if that's the Ms. Odum's location.
Your Honor, I'd like to read the relevant
So
portion.
it looked to me like, tell me if I read it, was there an actual site visit?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, that's the way I read it,
Oh.
that was actually out there. I think probably what I prefer to do is have you ask Mr. Frey some questions, let's see what the answers are, and then we can talk about given that, where we go, or do you want to just read that into the record?
Your Honor, I'd actually like to make a motion.
Okay.
Based on Mr. Frey's answer.
Okay.
There's been a prior ruling by the court that prior bad acts are inadmissible. That's the basis for excluding any information about the previous case. Mr. Frey's answer opened the door to any discussion about the case. And I assume that this is the reason. Okay. The crux of our lawsuit is that the defendants knowingly did these things to my client, knowingly injured her, that it wasn't an accident. There's no absence, there's an absence of mistake here. And there's knowledge. Now, I asked Mr. Frey if he knew my client was a farmer. After the 2018 incident, his answer was unequivocally no. After the 2018 incident, there was a lawsuit and we took his deposition. There was a prior inconsistent statement that he made. He stated during the visit, okay, what did she say? She said she wanted to show me around her property and where she grew an organic farm, but didn't have it continuing at that point. And then later on, I show him an image, and I say, all right, I'm sorry, this image is really small here, but you see those little lines there along where I'm pointing on the map, just above where it states 5861? Yes. Okay, does that look like Miss Odum's farm? Oh, yeah, that's it. Your Honor, the witness was advised before testifying today that he could answer a question in a manner that would open the door to discussion of the prior lawsuit. And that's exactly what he just did. The jury could believe, based on his statement, that this incident never occurred. Now that's prejudicial to my client. I mean, if they simply don't know about it, that's one thing. But if he feigns not even knowing that she was a farmer or an organic farmer during his testimony, they could believe that when it's not the truth. And two, he's making a statement that's inconsistent with another sworn statement that he made that we believe we're entitled to impeach him on. And so once that occurs, Your Honor, it's our position that, and this is typically the way it works in, I believe, in criminal proceedings when the prior bad acts issue arises. If a witness or a defendant in the context of a criminal case chooses to testify, they choose to assert, to make positive statements about what's happening, they're opening themselves up to a whole slew of questions based on what their answers are. And in this case, if Mr. Frey had simply answered yes, no opening the door, no inconsistent statement, I just would have proceeded. But he didn't do that. So that being the case, the jury is entitled to know the full facts. And we think that's under the Thunder Bay standard, it's relevant, it's now it's prejudicial, and it's my client if they don't find out. And it has a high degree of probative value because it shows that the first time this event happened, Mr. Frey knew about it, knew about the incident. And even if Lynn Weaver was the pilot in that situation, Mr. Frey certainly knew that the flight was going to occur in that field, in that area where the prior lawsuit occurred. So it's our position based on the statute, based on the Thunder Bay case, that Mr. Frey's testimony has opened the door. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I understand. Mr. Leath?
Your Honor, I disagree. I think that when there was already the court's ruling that counsel's not allowed to ask a question or solicit a question which he knows can trigger a response that would contradict what the court has already ruled. So that's number one. Number two is asking a very general question about, can we ask a specific question? You were aware that she was an organic farmer. Yes, I mean, we will stipulate to that. That doesn't open the door to anything. That's just, that's knowledge that he unfortunately had from the prior alleged incident. And so I don't see how this opens the door at all. I see this as an attempt to try to kick the door open through a method that I think is in contradiction to what the judges are, what you've already so, anything with respect to the...
May I, Your Honor? It's just another of the relentless attempts by Mr. Busby to circumvent this court's ruling that this no prior bad act testimony can come in from the earlier lawsuit. The way to repair this is what the court has already suggested, which is impeach him on whether he knew or not that she was an organic farmer. And if he looks at the deposition testimony and says, yeah, you're right, I did know that. Stop right there. We don't need to, this is just a thin end of the wedge. It's an artifice by Mr. Busby. Try to get back into the prior bad act, which you've ruled against him on at least 3 or 4 times and almost on a daily basis.
So my ruling was that you could renew it. I think the question was appropriate. I think it was within the confines of my my ruling. I think based on the answer, let me just ask Mr. Frey,
Yes.
why did you say no?
And she's a gardener.
And your question was, did you know she was a farmer?
Yes, sir.
I go to schools on where we discuss gardening, farming, and gardening can be dates on big tall trees.
Let me just think for a minute. So, so what is your definition of a farmer?
A farmer, a great way to start out saying it uses tractors and irrigation ditches, large quantities of seed, what all they choose to amend their soils. I go to organic farms and I was in one 2 months ago, it was in a 160 acre parcel, so probably 140 acres of tilled and irrigated soil.
So what's the cutoff between a gardener and a farmer?
Well,
Is there, I guess,
if I drove by her place, I'd see her out there with a hoe or hand picking or just totally. And I wouldn't see a tractor and a disc and laser left. For Fallon, it just doesn't fit. I would not mislead people and say I'm a farmer if I had a garden.
I'll let each side respond with what they think I should do. I know you want me to revisit my ruling, but is there anything else? If I don't do that, what would you suggest?
Permit me to read into the record or to impeach Mr. Frey and his prior inconsistent statement from the deposition in 2018. But the problem that arises here is I asked him if he was deposed before. I asked him a foundational question about what was he doing at Ms. Odum's farm in 2018 or when this occurred. And then the situation makes sense to the jury, which is why, testifying is a dangerous thing. You're subject to cross-examination, and everything you say is subject to impeachment based on prior inconsistent statements.
Sure.
There's no way they couldn't have been aware.
But in civil cases, nobody has a choice, right? In a criminal case, you take the stand because you want to.
Well, Your Honor, I think his choice was to answer the question consistent with what he said.
Sure. And I guess,
And I'm
yes,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
And his explanation, he was present for the testimony of Van Sloan, who said she was a farmer. He said she was a farmer. This new explanation, in light of what he's heard about the arguments, is not adequate in my mind, Your Honor. I don't think it's reasonable.
I'll let you respond.
Your Honor, the fact that the jury doesn't know where the deposition came from or what it was about, that's an interesting excuse for bringing in prior bad acts. But you can just say, have you made any prior statements that Salisha Odum was a farmer? Yeah, I did. Thanks for reminding me. Let's stop right there. The fact that, I need to tell the jury that it was from a deposition is ludicrous.
So I'm not going to change my ruling on the prior lawsuit. I still think that the analysis of the probative value being substantially outweighed and the prejudicial impact still weighs in favor of that. I'm going to let you start. I mean, part of it is like we don't know what the answers are going to be because you never know, right? I'll then let you re-ask the question. Is it true that well in advance of this, you knew she was a farmer? And depending on what his answer is, I'll let you inquire why he said no. I'll let him explain it. I'll let you ask questions. But I just think the fact that there was a lawsuit, that there was a settlement, I just think that's too prejudicial. That there was a deposition. I think it goes down rabbitable. I think the Preservation Act is substantially more than appropriate. I think you get the same essential appropriate. I understand why you want it. That's not, which I think is, but I think, and I guess if you think you need to use the deposition to impeach him after his answers, we can ask for that, we can excuse the jury and decide, but, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Should he be allowed to just explain his last answer by saying, you asked me about a farmer, I understand you believe she's a farmer, I consider her a gardener, and just, that's it.
Well, I mean, I think it would depend on what the answers are. I would expect it to be, it is intriguing that she was growing things like that. Yes, why did you say no?
Okay,
But if he tells him that's his choice, you would be able to across.
okay, thank you, Your Honor.
So, or redirect. So, that'll be my rule. We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. The record should reflect the presence of parties, counsel, all court personnel, and the jury. Will counsel stipulate to the correct seating of the jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Busby, you may continue.
All right, Mr. Frey. Continuing, before August 31st, 2020, did you know if my client was a farmer?
I have a different definition of farmer than you do, so I say gardener, you say farmer, and we'll get along. But I'm supposed to answer yes or no, and I don't know how we're gonna do that with your questions.
Okay. So I take your answer to be no, because I think she's a gardener. Is that an accurate representation of what you believe?
My thoughts are valued, yes, but your thoughts are valued also.
I appreciate that. All right, Mr. Frey, before August 31st, 2020, did you know whether my client grew organic food?
Yes, I knew, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I want to talk about the incidents that are the subject of the case for a few minutes. So the August 31st, 2020 incident. There's been testimony that Lynn Weaver was the pilot in that incident.
I need to see the paperwork.
Okay. You don't recall who was the pilot on the August 31st incident?
No,
All right. Actually, what I will do is show you something else. And for counsel's edification, these have been redacted. Mr. Frey, do you recall us issuing interrogatories to you in this case?
I remember the issuance, yes.
Okay, do you remember signing under penalty of perjury that the answers that you gave were correct?
I remember signing lots of papers in my life, and I remember signing those.
Okay, can you take a look at interrogatory number 2 on the screen in front of you, and that's been admitted by the court. And when you're done reading that part, I'll forward to the next page. Oh, I'm sorry, it's interrogatory number 1. Top of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, I remember that, but we just had the dates up for another, those job tickets, 34 and 35 exhibits.
Yeah.
And I'd like to view those again.
Mr. Frey, I'm gonna ask that you answer questions based on what I'm presenting to you here.
Well, then I'm confused, so no answer.
Okay, Mr. Frey, you're gonna refuse to answer my question about him?
Until I get a clarification on exhibit 34 and 35.
So, Mr. Frey, the way this will work is Mr. Busby gets to answer your questions, and if your counsel wants to clarify with you afterwards,
Clean it up now.
I mean, you can address it and if there's a need to see things. My recollection, just for, I can see why there may be some confusion. I think those refer to a different date, right?
Right,
And so but, yeah.
okay. Mr. Frey, do you remember responding to interrogatory number 1 that your pilot for the August 31st, 2020 incident was Lynn Weaver?
If I filled it out and signed it, I would say yes.
Okay. All right, so do you recall whether you discussed with Mr. Weaver in reference to doing that job, the fact that my client had an organic farm near where you were going to spray?
Yes, we just, yes.
Okay, so in everyday language, you told him ahead of time, hey, there's an organic farm there, watch out?
Yes.
Something like that? Okay, do you remember specifically what you said?
I know I repeated it several times because we had a problem of, you've asked me to say yes or no, so yes.
Okay, but I'm asking specifically what was discussed. What did you say to him?
How do I answer that, yes or no? That's what I want to know.
I'm not asking for a yes or no answer.
Oh,
I'm asking
okay.
for the substance of your conversation with Mr. Weaver before he conducted the spray job on August 31st, 2020.
Okay, I misunderstood.
No
I'm
problem.
sorry. I remember, yes.
Okay. All right, so, okay. Do you recall the Nevada Department of Agriculture calling you about a complaint that my client made?
Objection,
Many
vague
times.
ambiguous at the time.
About this incident, the allegations surrounding the incident on August 31st, 2020?
Yes, I remember calling and it seemed like it was a day or two later.
Okay. Here-
But I drove the records up to Reno
Okay.
immediately.
Was it Mr. Lum that requested the records from you?
My first thought is it was Mr. Allen, but I could be mistaken. I don't always catch the name. My hearing's only so good. Phones are terrible. That's why I drive right up there to meet with them.
Okay, but he requested the records from you?
Someone did.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. If they're from the Department of Agriculture, they want records, they get them, and I start driving.
Okay. So, did they ever request to inspect any of your equipment or anything like that surrounding the allegations of the overspray on August 31st, 2020?
August 1st, 2020. They could have, people come, yeah, they could have, I don't recall.
All right. Moving on. Let's talk about the next incident, the July 6, 2021 incident. And you heard Mr. Rakoff testify, did you not?
Mr. Rakup,
Rakoff.
yes.
Thanks.
I enjoyed that.
So, Mr. Rakoff is a former friend of yours?
Still a friend as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, so he said he saw your plane that day spraying the field north of his house, right?
Right.
And the record seemed to indicate, or Mr. Weaver's
Can I
testimony.
retract that. He
No.
didn't say he saw it spraying.
Excuse me? I'm sorry.
But not,
Mr. Frey.
you heard me.
No, I didn't, that's why I'm asking.
Could we form that into a question?
Well, I think you asked to read, you said, can I redact that? And then I think you guys were talking over each other. Did you
Okay.
want to clarify your previous testimony, I think is what. the question-
Yes, he did not see the plane spraying.
Okay. All right. So the next incident, oh yeah, that was a job that Mr. Weaver did as well. the June, or July 6, 2021 incident?
Objection, vague and ambiguous. Misstates testimony.
Well, I think it's a question. Was Mr. as an overview of I'll let you ask the question. Mr. Frey?
Can I ask a question?
No, I mean, the answer is, did Mr. Weaver do it? Yes, no, or I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay.
Without a job ticket, I'm not answering.
Okay. All right. Did you fly your plane on July 6, 2021 in the vicinity of my client's property?
I don't have a job ticket, so I can't answer.
Okay. All right. How about August 16th, 2021? Did you fly your plane in the vicinity of my client's property on that day?
I don't have a job ticket in front of me. I can't answer. I'm presuming that that's the Mount Iron application.
Okay. So,
Presuming.
okay. So, for the July 6, 2021 incident, do you recall whether you, again, warned Mr. Weaver that he would be flying near my client's property?
I warned him of a lot of things there, and I can describe if you ask.
Okay. So I'm just asking that specifically for that incident. Did you warn Mr. Weaver to stay away from my client's property?
That and many other warnings.
Okay. Okay, so then on August 16th, 2021, you were doing spraying on a field adjacent to my client's property, correct?
No, there's a railroad easement. I don't know. I don't know what you mean by adjacent.
Okay. How about near my client's property?
What is your definition of near, and I'll answer yes or no.
Within a quarter mile?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 21. Could Mr. Frey please look at the screen? This one in front of you will show it as well.
Or close to it.
Or close to it, yeah.
Okay, so were you flying the plane that's depicted in that video?
I remember very well flying that airplane in what I would say was in that video.
Okay. Did you fly over my client's property that day?
No,
Did you fly near my client's property that day?
quarter mile very, very easily.
Okay, so are you saying you were within a quarter mile of my client's property?
I don't carry a measuring tape and I'm not trying to be smart or all that. I want to get to the bottom of this, but I did not fly over her property. Because I remember going, oh my gosh, looking down, trying to get in alongside of those wires in that field up Roberson Lane without any cars coming.
Okay,
So
so
I remember it was an exciting moment, right, exactly while that was going by.
as you heard, it was exciting for Minnesota too, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So why would you warn your pilot, Mr. Weaver, to stay away from my client's property when, for 2 occasions, on August 31st of 2020 and then July 6th of 2021, and then, you know, approximately a month and a half later, fly so close to her property?
We have a saying in our industry, spraying, airplanes, don't take on any, or don't hand out a job to somebody you wouldn't do yourself, and it was proof.
So, Mr. Frey, the day you were spraying in that video, you knew where my client's property was, right?
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of. The thing that's never been mentioned is the oncoming traffic from the Navy, the pipeline patrol, and the air medical helicopter back and forth to the hospital. We're all the same altitudes.
Okay. So,
And so you can't be just looking at her garden, or excuse me, farm, whatever you want to say,
okay,
the whole time. You just cannot. We have 360-degree visibility in the airplane. Our head could be turned a way you can't imagine.
okay. So, Mr. Frey, you know though that on August 31st, 2020, the Nevada Department of Agriculture did some testing, and the results of those testing showed that the chemical that you were spraying that day, at least one of them was found on the client's property, right?
I did not know.
Okay. Were you provided with the Nevada Department of Agriculture's report when you issued it?
I don't, if I did, I forwarded it to the insurance.
Okay. I'd like you to take a look at what's been marked as exhibit number 61. All right. Does this look familiar, Mr. Frey? It's showing up kind of weird there. Let me put it back up. Sorry about that.
That helps.
Ugh, this thing. Okay, I'm sorry. Give me a moment. All right, how's that?
I like it.
Okay. So do you see the date of the report there at the top, October 14th, 2020?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And this was the report from Vance Lum that we've discussed at length in this case.
Yes.
And do you see there at the bottom where it says CC Jerry Frey, primary principal of Frey Spray? Is that you?
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Lum provided you with this report, right?
I believe so. I don't see Lum's name on this page, but
Okay. Did you read it when you got it?
I recognize it and I believe I read it, yeah.
Okay. Did Mr. Lum ever recommend to you that you not fly over McLean's property?
Yes,
Did he state that to you in person or in writing, or how did he say it to you?
both.
Okay. What did he say to you in person?
Said, he didn't say it like that. He said it's just best sometimes that we just don't go over that property, and I didn't.
Okay. So your testimony is that you didn't fly over my client's property?
That's right, yes, I did not.
Okay. So, and in this report, Mr. Lum made you aware that Ms. Odum had an organic farm, right?
I would presume so. If he didn't, I knew.
So, did you know how badly you would hurt her,
Oh my
her
gosh.
business? if-
Because
I would have
it's, I,
objection, Your Honor.
what's the objection?
It's vague and ambiguous as to terminology.
Also stated as vague, but.
Right. Mr. Frey, you've heard testimony about the consequences to an organic farmer if they get sprayed with pesticides, right?
Right,
Okay. Did you want to avoid that happening to my client?
yes.
Okay, why didn't you stay away from the property?
I wasn't spraying.
Okay.
I just don't know how loud to say it so you can hear it. I have a hard time hearing your voice, so I wear a helper.
Okay.
You're in a bad business if you're bad voice.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Frey. Okay, next. Exhibit 60. Do you recognize this document, Mr. Frey?
Yes,
All right. So is this the August 3rd, 2021 report from Mr. Lum?
yes,
Did you receive this report?
I believe so.
Okay.
I wanted a doctor's report.
Okay. In this report, did Mr. Lum advise you once again to stop flying over my client's property?
Don't recall that being said.
Okay.
It very well could have.
Okay. Did you read this report when you got it?
I remember it saying she had burning eyes when I got to that part.
Right. And I assume the same thing is true of Exhibit 59. I'm sorry, returning back to Exhibit 60. Was this report provided to you by mail, or how did you get it?
I don't have email, so I don't get email, so it had to come USPS.
Did you read it when you got it?
I believe this is page 3 of the last page you showed me, and I read everything in its entirety. I do my best.
Okay. All right. So Exhibit 59. And this is the September 20th, 2021 report from Mr. Lum, is that correct?
It's vague but possible. I read it. I don't get emailings. People say, we sent you email. I don't care.
Okay. Do you recall reading this around the time period that it was issued, September 20th, 2021?
Again, it says burning ice, so I recognize that. So
Okay. But my question is, did you read it?
I had unless it's a repetitive symptoms or matter or whatever, I'm gonna have to say, I don't remember reading it.
Okay. All right, Mr. Frey. Moving on. How many different pesticides do you spray in your business?
I used to know, and it was like 8, and as times grew and pesticides became more exotic, I believe, I have boxes of them. Over the years, accumulative or in a season?
In a season.
30?
Okay. Do you remember being interviewed by a reporter named Anthony Postman?
I don't recall who. I remember being interviewed by reporters, and I don't remember their names. They like to talk fast.
Okay. May I have Exhibit 17?
Your Honor, I'm going to object since the relevance.
I mean, I don't know what it is, so I can't rule. What is it?
Your Honor, I'm using this for impeachment purposes.
What's the time frame?
Article was published in September 19th of 2020.
I'll allow you to ask a question, your objection, depending on what's asked.
Mr. Frey, I'd like you to take a look at this article. Mr. Frey, have you ever seen that before?
No.
Do you recall whether it was disclosed during the course of discovery of this case?
Yes. I believe this was it. I haven't reviewed this to get this really nailed down.
Okay.
But again, my friends that watch postings on the social media have mentioned what I'm seeing somewhat in there, yeah.
Okay, I'd like you to turn, do you see the little numbers at the bottom starting with Odum 00387?
Correct, yes.
Right.
I'm sorry, what page, counsel?
Odum 000387,
And exhibit one more time, sorry.
Exhibit 17.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Frey, do you see the second paragraph from the bottom there where it states how many agents does Frey use?
Second paragraph up the 3 sentences, or the, how many agents does Mr. Frey use?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not much, yeah.
See that sentence?
Okay, I see appointment 2 of it. So, okay, second, probably close. Yeah,
What does it say there?
probably close to 100.
Okay. And if you continue the entire quote, can you read the rest of it?
Okay, probably close to 100. We tried to keep it confined to just a few, and that's about as few as we can get. We could enlarge it and go to 200. I still stand by that.
Okay. Mr. Frey, do you think that the pesticide that you were using on August 31st, 2020 is dangerous at all?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance is to this state of mind.
Not a lot of question. But I will say this, it might be helpful for the triers of fact to help them identify what I did. I mean, there's three different, I mean,
I'll use the exhibits after. Do you remember having a conversation with Mr. Postman about a couple different pesticides?
Yeah, I, at one time, or maybe even multiple times, thought I was talking to different people in a phone call
Okay.
and don't know Postman. I don't even know what he looks like. I mean, I could have been talking to some girl in Milan, Italy.
All right. Do you see at the top of the first page there where it says by Anthony Postman?
So that verifies it.
Do you recall speaking with Mr. Postman?
I can't hear good when people get on the phone and talk fast.
Okay, all right. Mr. Frey, do you remember telling Mr. Postman that you thought, well, backing up just a second. So this article is from September of 2020, so it's not that long after
Right.
the spraying incident, right? Okay. And you heard the testimony that the chemical that you were spraying that day, or at least one of them, is now banned from being used on food products. Do you remember that?
And, boy, we could go on and on about ban from food products, but there's a, what do you call it? But anyway, let's continue.
Mr. Frey, I need you to
I'm not
answer
going to
me.
get picky.
I need you to answer my question. Did you hear the testimony about the product that you were spraying being banned for being used on food products?
I heard
Objection.
about,
It misstates testimony as to the time of the ban.
yeah.
so let me remember this straight. I think your first question had the time frame in it, and the second one didn't.
Okay. Mr. Frey, do you recall testimony about the chemical that you were using in August 31st, on August 31st, 2020, being subsequently banned from being used on food products?
There was somebody that interviewed me that said glyphosate was banned. And then I think you might be trying to say chlorpyrifos.
Okay. Do you see the quote there on the bottom of page 5 of 8 on Odum 000388?
I'm sorry, what page?
000388.
Yeah,
All right.
there.
And if I may approach the witness?
Of course. May I suggest you point out on his document? Oh, sure. And that way.
Your Honor, I'm just going to object again as to relevance. This was, I'm not sure how this is impeachment anymore.
I'm not allowed to question.
All right, Mr. Frey, can you read that quote into the record?
Can I revisit my, I do think it's proper to impeach with the article, but you probably need to ask a question and then decide whether, does that make sense?
Sure.
I mean, I
That's
think-
your-
So I'm going to revisit my ruling and just say that I'll go ahead, I'll sustain the objection, but I'll allow it to be removed.
All right. Do you recall discussing paramethrins and pyrethroids with Mr. Postman?
I do.
I'm sorry,
Whether
I
it's
know
with
I'm
Mr.
garbling this.
Postman, I don't know Mr. Postman. If he walked in here, somebody on the phone can say there's somebody, and it might be a girl in Hong Kong.
Okay. Do you recall saying, and if you're sitting on your kitchen table and the gallon jug of this falls over and starts gurgling out, it could run onto a baby, a brand new born baby, and not harm it at all. Do you remember saying that?
That sounds like me, yes.
So it sounds to me like your opinion is this stuff isn't dangerous at all, right?
Objection, Your Honor, again, relevance as to this witness's opinion.
It would sound like that if we didn't ask him more
Let me
questions.
rule on the, I'm gonna allow the question.
Go ahead, Mr. Frey.
Water's dangerous, you can drown in it.
Okay. But I'm
So there's
asking,
exceptions to the rule, that's what I was trying to think of.
Your Honor, I'm sorry to do this, but I would ask that the court admonish the witness to answer the question that's asked. It's being evasive.
No, I'm not. I remember
So-
saying that.
So, now, I will say that I've been taking a minute to explain this. He did ask you to answer yes or no, but he has been asking some questions that require, so you're gonna have to, but if you just answer his question, your attorney will be able to ask you questions afterwards. Does that make sense?
Let's do that. Yes, it makes sense.
Please, Mr. Frey, answer my question.
Can you say that question again?
Okay. Do you believe that this pesticide that you were spraying on August 31st, 2020 isn't dangerous?
Objection, again, lack of foundation.
Sure.
So, I mean, I'm gonna make a suggestion. It's hard for me to remember which one is on which day.
Okay.
And so I think if you refer to one or both of them, it might be easier to
You have to
answer.
say chlorpyrifos.
Go ahead, I'll go along with,
Okay, Mr. Frey, do you think chlorpyrifos is dangerous?
Again, finally, just objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Sure, I'm gonna overrule that.
Go ahead, Mr. Frey.
I could do a better job for you if I could explain the difference between a pyrethrin or a pyrethroid.
I'm not asking you that, Mr. Frey.
You asked me about a pyrethroid,
I'm asking whether you
and
think,
those last three letters mean a lot.
Mr. Frey, I'm simply asking whether you think chlorpyrifos is dangerous. Do you or don't you?
I'm not sure fro even exists, so I'm saying I can't answer.
Chlorpyrifos? Is that better?
I'd like to see the spelling of it in a proper document.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Frey, did you think that this stuff is so safe that you could spray it all over a baby?
I wouldn't spray it on a baby if it fell in their crib.
So, do you know what the consequences are for an organic farmer if there's even a suspected overspray incident on their farm?
Suspected, consequences would be an investigation.
Okay. You heard Ms. Odum's testimony about how she really couldn't sell her food until she got the results from the tests that were conducted, right?
Yes,
Were you aware of that before August 31st, 2020?
no.
Okay.
It wasn't sprayed, so it didn't matter.
Okay. Mr. Frey, I'll look up my notes and I might have a few more questions, but I think we'll just speak down.
I'll stand by.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah, you said you get paid by the acre.
Yes.
How much do you get paid by the acre?
It'd be kind of like, we base our price on $12 an acre. That's just for the application only, no materials, but we put in drift control agents and ourselves, our own cost to be included in that. But then they'll ask for sometimes, they want a lot more gallons on per acre because their neighbor or somebody in California got it. As long as it meets the criteria in the label to go do that, we'll do it. So the price goes up. If you've got to carry twice as many loads out to a farmer's place, you up your price. That would sometimes go to $20 an acre. And then you add the material, the actual chemical. There's a lot of things don't understand. A lot of times I get asked to check the field. I tell them what's in it, and they say, can you do something about it? I give them a choice of chemicals, and it's usually based on price. A lot of people want the most inexpensive way, but yet they want to cut in 5 days. So that changes it to a higher price chemical. And then, oh geez, this is horrible on honeybees, so we don't want to do that. So we finally settle in on one, and it can cost $70, $75 an acre.
All right, do you recall how much the job cost at Rambling Road Ranches that you guys did on August 31st, 2020?
If I have a document with that job sheet, I could tell you.
Got it for you. There you go.
That was an application only $14 an acre, and it's up from the $12 because it's so far out of town.
Okay, so what was the total charge that day?
$283. Or wait, $9,283.
Okay.
What exhibit is that?
That is exhibit 43, it's been admitted.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Busby, I know you wanted to go over your notes, and someone sent me a signal that they'd like a break.
Oh, yeah.
And I like to try to be responsive to that, and then we'll let you go over your notes, and then we'll go for it. Is that okay?
Sounds great. Thank you, sir. I just have a few more things I want to go over.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, that is.
Very well. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. During this recess, it is your duty not to converse among yourselves with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not communicate with anyone in any way regarding the case or its merit through by phone, email, text, internet, or other means. Do not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. Do not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. Additionally, it is your duty not to form or express an opinion on any subject connected with this case until it is finally submitted to you. We'll take a 15-minute recess, come back at 3:25.
All rise.
We're back on the record on case number 21, there's 1088, Odum v. Frey. The record should reflect the presence of the parties, all counsel, all court personnel, and the jury. Will counsel stipulate to the correct seating of the jury?
So stipulate,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Busby, you may continue.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Frey, just a couple more questions. I'll try and be as fast as I can, okay?
Do the best I can.
All right, so we were talking about how much money you charge to do your work. There was an invoice here for $9,283 that you looked at.
Yes.
How many of those jobs do you do in a month?
We're capable of doing one a day,
Okay,
but we
Wow.
only do maybe 10, 15 days.
okay. And how much of this $9,283 goes into the costs of providing the service?
I would just object to the extent of relevance.
About 9,000.
What is the relevance?
I want to, I'm not sure if I can.
Okay. I'll allow it for, well, just a few questions.
Okay.
Mark, can we approach, please?
Sure.
All right, Mr. Frey, do you recall Mr. Weaver's testimony about how he would spray the field next to Salisha Odum's farm kind of in a horizontal way, and then he said going up and down would be much, much more expensive? Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. Can you tell me how much more expensive that would have been?
It would add to the expenses. My first figure to throw out would be 30%, might go to 40, might go to 70 or 80. The worst part is it heats up the engine, and the engines are more expensive than you could imagine.
Okay, but you wouldn't have to do that for every job, it's just that one, right?
No,
Okay,
we get asked.
that's all I have for you, Mr. Frey. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Leath?
Your Honor, actually, I do not have any additional questions, so.
Thank you, Mr. Frey. Thank you, Please be seated. I think that is that a marked exhibit? That is a marked exhibit.
Yes, 17.
The bailiff looking at it. Mr. Lee?
Defense rests.
And Mr. Busby, do you have any rebuttal testimony?
I do not.
Do you have the witness here? or-
I do.
Okay.
I'd like to call Mr. Joe Frey.
Go for it. Is he in the library, or I guess?
Yes.
Your Honor, we're gonna object to this witness on the grounds of relevance. We'd ask for a bench conference.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to have to take another brief recess outside of the presence to discuss some court business. During this recess, it is your duty not to converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not communicate with anyone in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by phone, email, text, internet, or other means. Do not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. Do not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. Additionally, it is your duty not to form or express an opinion on any subject connected with this case until it is finally submitted to you. Go ahead and excuse the jury. We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. The record to reflect the presence of parties, counsel, all court personnel were meeting outside the presence of the jury. There are two bench conferences that we've had since we last discussed them. At 3:28 approximately, we approached about the testimony regarding the costs of, I think it was the Bell Ranch spraying. Is that accurate? I don't remember the exhibit number.
I believe it was.
And the court ruled that you could inquire, at least Mr. Busby indicated he wanted to see how much more it would cost to have done it in the less efficient way, and I said you could do that inquiry. And that was that bench conference. I think that was over the objection of the defense. Is there anything else you want to put on the record about that, Mr. Busby?
Nothing, Your Honor.
And Mr. V?
Mr. Hebert handled that one.
Your Honor, we'd like to put on the record that the line of questioning was starting to become an improper attempt to elicit financial information from the defendant, which is utterly prejudicial to the jury and impermissible. So have the jury base their decision on how much the defendant is worth.
Sure. And that was your objection, but we
Yes.
limited it. Anything you would put on my ruling that you disagree with? Or?
No, I don't disagree with your ruling. I just want to make sure that my objections got in.
Very well. And then right after that, so at 3:30, the defense rested, and Mr. Busby wanted to call his rebuttal, the first rebuttal witness, and that was Joe Frey. Counsel approached, and that's where we left it. And I don't know anything more about where we're going other than I think there's a question about his testimony and whether or not the objection is of relevance.
Yes, Your Honor, we would lead with the objection of relevance. It's our understanding that Joe Frey was not involved in any of the applications at issue, was not an employee of Frey Spray during any of the applications at issue. and perhaps worked there in the past, but it's so long ago and remote that it's not relevant.
And Mr. Busby?
And then Mr. Hebert has some additional. Sorry, Your Honor.
It's prior bad acts testimony, Your Honor, and that's why we need an offer of proof outside the presence of the jury under Taylor versus Thunder.
And so, Mr. Busby, I do think I need to go through the Thunder analysis, but would it be best to have Mr. Frey come up and run through essentially his testimony?
I think we need to establish some basic facts.
Okay. So, Mr. Frey, will have you come to the witness stand? If you face the clerk and raise your right arm to take the oath of the witness.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this matter, now pending before the court, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Please be seated. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Frey. Thank you for coming. Good to see you. Can you state and spell your name for the record?
Joseph Frey, Josephfrey.
Okay. Ms. Frey, what do you do for a living?
I'm a farmer and a pilot.
Okay. Have you ever worked for Frey Spray?
Yeah.
When did you work?
What I would say from 13 to 15-ish, something along those lines.
Is that 2013 to 2015?
Yeah, 2013 to 2015.
Okay. And what did you do when you worked for Frey Spray?
I was flying one of the airplanes.
Okay.
Dusting.
And you're related to Mr. Frey, the defendant, correct?
Yes, he's my
What's
uncle.
your relationship?
He's my uncle.
Okay. I'd like to show you what's been marked as Exhibit number 18. Yeah, Richard?
Yes.
Mr. Frey, on the first page there, is that your handwriting?
It looks like it, yes.
Okay. Can you read that into the record?
On 6-12 through 6-14, Jerry also sprayed 2 ounces per acre of zeal. First he told me that he forgot it, then later said that he did apply it, but just did not want it on the records because it was an investigation.
All right. Are you familiar with the basic reporting requirements or record-keeping requirements for an operation that engages in the aerial spraying of pesticides?
Mildly, it's been a while since I've reviewed some of that stuff, but yeah, mildly.
Okay.
So,
What you're indicating there, is that consistent with those requirements insofar as you're aware?
I'm not sure what context this is in.
If you advance a few pages, I think it'll make more sense to page 3
Okay.
of that exhibit.
Okay,
Do you see the dates there?
yes.
Okay. Is the document on the first page of this exhibit, is it referring to this log here of pesticide applications?
I could assume so, but would not be with 100% certainty, but I mean, those dates match up with Jerry being the applicator of Roundup on the Bell fields and Ogden fields that I formed at the time.
Okay, do you see at the top of page 3 where it says official?
Yes,
Do you recognize that handwriting?
that looks like mine.
Okay. So, guess I'll just cut to the chase. Do you have any knowledge of whether or not Mr. Frey ever falsified records of what he sprayed and where he sprayed, things like that, when you worked for him?
Objection, Your Honor, it's leading, it seems facts on evidence, and it's also, I'll just leave it at that.
So I'm going to allow it for purposes of this hearing, is to get a feel for where we're at.
Objection.
Will you please repeat the question?
Sure. Do you have any knowledge that Mr. Frey ever falsified records related to the application of pesticides, dates, times, details, etc., during the course of your employment?
Not necessarily in general. On this deal, I do recollect that there was something, either there was some confusion or, as to which fields got sprayed, what exactly got sprayed, but, and I do remember doing some of the paperwork after the job was done that was supposed to be done prior to the job being done. I can't recall the details of that.
Understood. But on the first page of this exhibit, you indicate that Mr. Frey first told you he forgot something and then told you he didn't want it in the records because there was an investigation. Is that right?
Objection, hearsay, that
That's all I heard.
Sure, I'm going to allow him to answer the question. Go ahead.
Okay, will you repeat the question again, please?
Sure. In the note on page 1, this is exhibit 18, it states that Mr. Frey first told you that he forgot about an application and then later said that he did apply it but just did not want to it in the records because there was an investigation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what the note says.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Frey.
Mr. Leath, do you have any questions?
Well, Your Honor, I think it's,
It's not arguments, just questions, then I'll hear argument.
no, Mr. Frey, when you were working for Frey Spray, what was your role?
Was a pilot?
Were you a W-2 employee or a 1099 independent contractor?
Neither, we just kind of traded stuff around. Jerry and I have a bunch of stuff together, and so there was no payment involved directly.
Okay. And this note here that's on page 1, do you have any recollection of writing this note?
I kind of think so now that I see this Nell again. I do remember being at that hotel and going through some of the stuff and possibly writing that note, but as far as writing that particular note, no, I don't recollect exactly writing that down.
Okay. And you do remember there just simply being a confusion issue at some point in time over what pesticides were either sprayed or going to be sprayed?
Yeah, I do remember actually being frustrated with it because I felt like I provided really good maps and really good explanation, and then at the end of the day, I didn't know what got sprayed or how much it got sprayed, or so I remember being frustrated about that particular spray drill.
And that was a job that was being sprayed for your benefit as a grower?
Yes, I was the grower of the crops.
Yeah. Okay. Nothing else, Your Honor?
I'd like to now hear argument on whether we should admit or allow this witness to testify and under what circumstances you should. Probably best that we have Mr. Frey wait outside the courtroom, and so that's what I'm going to suggest we do next. And so Mr. Frey, if you just go back out where you're waiting.
Okay.
You can read that from there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. There's been a large amount of testimony about records in this case and what they mean, including exhibits 32 through 35, there's conflicting materials that have been produced in the records, and there's a question of fact about whether the representations that have been made by witnesses, both Mr. Weaver and Mr. Frey, as well as the representations in the documents that have been submitted, are accurate. Another big issue is whether the representations about what was being sprayed at the time of the records associated with the sprayings provided to the Nevada Department of Agriculture were accurate. Now, we've got a witness who unequivocally says that Mr. Frey knew there was an investigation going on of some sort and decided to not keep accurate records as a result of that. That's directly relevant to his credibility as to the representations that he made on the stand and to the representations that are made in the documents that are provided to the court, as well as the Nevada Department of Agriculture. And it also explains the large amount of eyewitnesses that you're seeing here that say they see stuff coming out of the plane or drift. There's tests that are always needed. And that's an inconsistency. And this is an explanation for why that inconsistency exists. And a reasonable juror can infer from the fact that Mr. Frey has previously falsified records that he might have done that here as well. That being the case,
Doesn't that sounds like propensity, right?
absence of mistake, intent, knowledge, planning, modus operandi, Your Honor. And those are all legitimate exceptions
Sure.
to the prior bad acts rule. And it's especially poignant now because Mr. Frey has testified to these records what they say, despite their inconsistencies.
So this is rebuttal, and you're seeking it, I guess I'd like you to lay out specifically the purpose that you want. I want to make sure I understand, because this is definitely extrinsic evidence, right?
Indeed, yeah. But it's meant to rebut the assertions of fact regarding the veracity and accuracy of the records that form the basis of the Nevada Department of Agriculture's investigation and the records of Frey spray associated with that and with what's been presented in the case.
Thank you. Which counsel is going to address this? Mr. Hebert?
Your Honor, this is a perfect illustration of prior bad acts used to prove character, to have the propensity to do something wrong. I mean, from an overview, the fact that records are inaccurate, confusing, that's not the central issue here. The central issue here was Salisha Odum's property sprayed? So there's a real causation. I mean, it's irrelevant in the sense that all this bother about record keeping doesn't address the central issue. But anyway, this goes back to 2013, 2014, under the Thunder Ranch analysis. The testimony from Joseph Frey that there was confusion about what got sprayed doesn't even come close to meeting a clear and convincing standard that Thunder Ranch requires. And here we go again on collateral matters. Next, there'll have to be some evidence about what did he falsify. He'll have to explain what he allegedly falsified. And we're off going into next week on prior bad acts, which should never come in the first place. But Joe Frey himself said that there was confusion about what got sprayed. That's not clear and convincing. And it's more prejudicial than probative. It goes back to 2013 to 2015. And this is coming from a place of real bias because there's a whole lot of family background here about what Joe Frey has been doing to Jerry Frey, which is going to be the subject of another lawsuit down the road.
Sure, and there's nothing in the record for me right now.
No, I understand that, but if the court entertains this testimony, we'll have to put in some bias testimony about the bad blood, the family feud between Joe and Jerry, and the things that Joseph Frey has been doing. And one of the things he did was to file a criminal complaint that he got dive bombed, which is one of the things we're trying to exclude.
So, well, and nobody's seeking to exclude it right now. And I don't. So let me go ahead and tell you what my ruling is. So I think there are two potential areas of analysis that the court has to go to. And the first is the potential for the use of Joe Frey's testimony for impeachment purposes. He's describing an incident that happened between 8 to 10 years ago. His description is, or his recollection of the events, my finding was we're not completely clear. So it's distant in time. Joe Frey, while he was an employee at that time of Frey Spray, it was in his capacity as these lines are blurred based on his testimony, but it was as a farmer. And it'd be extrinsic testimony, and I think that it's not, extrinsic testimony is not a proper use for impeachment. So I think that the way it would have to come in is as a prior bad act under a Thunder Ranch analysis. And I will say this, I think the first one, this is one that I don't think has been proven by clear and convincing evidence. Its relevancy, I think it's more being shown for acting in conformance with what was testified to. I do understand the argument about modus operandi. But at least on 2 of these incidences, the person who was doing the spraying, although his testimony was, he generally didn't fill out the forms, was, is it Mr. Weaver? And there's no testimony from Mr. Frey about Mr. Weaver's actions. And so I find it very limited in questionable relevancy. And I do think that the prejudicial impact substantially outweighs the probative value. So I'm not going to allow Mr. Frey's testimony based on those reasons. Mr. Busby, anything you want to put on the record?
Just a objection, but thank you for considering that.
Thank you. And Mr. Hebert?
Nothing else, Your Honor.
Thank you. So we've now, do you have any other rebuttal testimony?
I do very brief testimony for myself.
Okay. So I'll just ask both counsel to tell me how do we deal? We said we were going to call Mr. Frey. We're not going to call Mr. Frey. What do you want me to tell the jury? Or nothing?
I prefer nothing, Your Honor.
Okay. And Mr. Hebert, what's your handle on this?
Your Honor, the question was, what do we tell the jury?
If anything.
I have a hard time hearing Mr. Busby say nothing.
He said nothing.
I'm with that. Nothing sounds good.
Okay. With the agreement of the parties, that's what we'll do. We'll just say, I'll say, Mr. Busby, call your next witness if they're called. Yes.